pray. Amen. And kids and workers, you can be dismissed and go and receive. Take your Bibles, go ahead and turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. This morning we're talking about love lessons from Joseph. And like I said, it comes out of the Joseph in Genesis chapter 40, 41. It may start in 37, but we're going to look at Joseph in Genesis chapter 50. But first we're going to look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And I shared with you earlier, but it is the chapter of love out of the New Testament where Paul is writing to the Corinthians. And it amazes me how Joseph went through so much, yet he chose the love. And it tells me that he is a great example to us as to how other people's behavior doesn't have to affect the way we love. I mean, good grief, our kids half the time we get our love because the way they act. So what we're going to do this morning is join me on the journey between 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and Genesis chapter 50. If you have your Bibles, you can look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. In other words, I'm useless. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. It's all for nothing. We go a little bit further. It says, if I give all I possess to the poor and I give over my body to hardship that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. And this is what I like to preach to people who are getting married or people who have been married for a while. But this is what love is. And it says love is patient and love is kind and it does not envy and it does not boast and it is not proud. And it does not dishonor others and it is not self-seeking and it is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. And one of, with your spouse, you can also have a historian. It's like every time that you get into a fight, they remember the things. And I would probably be the historian if things came out to be the truth. But it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. And love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be still. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part? It disappears. It says, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I put those childish ways behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So what we're doing this morning is we're learning lessons from Joseph's life. And we're comparing them somewhat to 1 Corinthians 13, which comes years after Joseph does. Hundreds, if not thousands. And so Joseph lived out a life of love. The life of Joseph was lived out in such a way that many would say he was robbed, that he was cheated, all because he was favored by his father. Now this is the Joseph, if you've seen the movie, the Technicolor Dreamcoat, this is that Joseph, okay? And so Joseph, and he had this beautiful coat that his father made him, and his father made it for him because he loved him. However, Joseph loved God in such a way that changed everything about him. And Joseph never let the way his brothers treated him affect the way how he responded to them, or the things that had happened against him. He never let those things affect him in the way that he treated his brothers. We wonder why we should read the Bible, but it's people like this that cause us to read the Bible. It's people like Joseph who we love their successes, but we forget the difficulty they endured to get there. We love a lot of people like that. It's easier to remember the good things than the bad things that happened to them. We read our Bibles and get to see what their life was like from beginning to end. And so we look at, if you have your Bibles, you can turn to Genesis chapter 50, but it is the Jobs that suffered much but never knew the reason. It is the Josephs, the father of Jesus, who loved Mary and became part of the story. He was a man that was full of integrity. We look at the other Joseph, but today we talk about the Joseph favored by his father. He was sold into slavery due to the jealousy of his brothers, a slave to Potiphar, as Potiphar was a ruler in the foreign kingdom of Egypt. Then he was left to die in a prison for a crime he didn't commit, all before coming to power to save Egypt and all the land from the great drought that was happening and the lack of food supply that was going on. It would have been easy for him to have tunnel vision. Haven't you ever seen those people? Or haven't you ever been those people that can only think about what's been done wrong against them? Joseph could have lived his life that way. He had been done wrong. He had been sold by his brothers into slavery, and because of that, he had served in Potiphar's slave to him and his wife for several years. He could have had tunnel vision. It would have been easy for him to blame his brothers and for him to never go any higher than a slave. I'm sure he missed his father. But instead of choosing to be mad at him, instead of choosing to be angry with him, he chose to love him. And this is what I know from the story. And that's number one, is that love is passionate. And this is where I got hung up on, is Genesis chapter 50, verse 1. And it says, Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him, and he kissed him. This is after Jacob, which is also known as Israel, has died. And so, he loved him so much, and he had missed him. From the time he was 17 to probably 41 when he actually came, his father actually came to Egypt. His father had lived the whole time thinking that he was dead. And it said Joseph threw himself on his father. In some versions, you'll see that he was face to face with his father. He was hand to hand with his father, and he wept over him and he kissed him. You're talking about a man who loved his father very much. And when I read the verse, I knew the depth of Joseph's love, because I understood it. When my grandfather died in 2012, we gathered around his bed. He was unconscious. I can remember what I said to my grandfather before he passed away. I told him, I said, thanks for everything. Because it was over. But I remember what my mom said to him. She said, hug my mother when you get there. But I wouldn't remember that, had she not really loved him. And I remember what I said, because I remember that he loved me. I remember Dad had this dream after he passed away where he was riding his tractor in this field, and Dad walked up to him, and he got off, and he said, it's your time now. And it was symbolic, and I remember it was because he loved him. And see, we do things. Love is passionate. See, real love is passionate. And Joseph threw himself on his father, and he kissed his father. Why? Not because he wanted some show. It's because he loved him. Real love is passionate. When I read this thousands of years later, it struck a chord with me. I knew how Joseph felt in that moment. He really loved his father. Love is passionate at times. It's why people do the things that they do in its name. It's why a Savior would go to a cross for you and for me. It's shown here in the way that Joseph throws himself on top of his father, but it's just a moment in time. It's really why a Savior would go to a cross for you. It's because he was passionate for you. And if you say, oh, I'm not important in the grand scheme of things, you're very important in the grand scheme of things. What did we talk about last week? We talked about he wants to save them all. That was his one message that he gave me through the entire brain surgery. Is he wants to save them all. He doesn't care. He doesn't have a label that he puts on some people and says, oh, I want to save them, but I don't want to. He wants to save them all. Right now, there's somebody that's working at the gas station cash register. He wants to save them. Right now at the store, there's somebody working that he wants to save them if they're not saved. He wants to love them. He wants to care for them. He wants to love you, and he wants to care for you the same way. Why is it that way? It's because love is passion. And he is love. You know what love also does is love causes action. It's not enough to say you love somebody. You got to do something to go with it. It wouldn't have been enough for me to marry April. It'll be 17 years in March. Praise the Lord. She's been good to me. In Stanley, we were very, very, very young, like 10, when we got married. had said to them. And when he saw the carts that Joseph had to carry him back, the spirits of their father Jacob revived. Why? Because love was passionate. He thought his son had been dead from age 17, till his son reached 39 or 40. It was 41 before he came back. So this is probably the 39 or 40 mark. For several years, 22, 23 years, he said, and Israel said, I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. And Joseph moved his father and brought him close. Joseph, he was more than a man that said he loved his father. He brought his father close to him. Why? Why do you bring him up? Because love is passion. Because love causes action. It's not enough just to say it, but it's what we do. Jesus loved you, so he would go to a cross for you. He would stretch out his arms. He would die for you. He would come out of the grave because he loved you. His love for you is passionate. It's more than just words on a page, but he loved him. He had missed him. Joseph's father, Jacob, had missed him. He had missed that relationship with him. Joseph had missed that relationship with his father. For 22, 23 years, imagine not seeing your son. That it had seemed like his brothers had told him that he was dead. He thought he was dead. In his mind, every day, he thought of his son. I know he did. Kendra thinks of his son. He lost it every day. I talked to Kendra about it. And several of you others who have lost children, you think of them every day. He had missed him. He had missed the relationship with him. His father had never stopped missing him. It had been over 20 years, and his absence was still as real as yesterday. Only a parent can love somebody that way. I was gone from my kids like I was 8 days away from Elijah and 12 days away from Hosanna during the surgery. In 8 days, I looked at the doctor and I told him, I said, man, I don't want to go home. So I can't imagine, more time, years, that him and his father had spent alone. Only a father missing a son, or a son missing a father, would understand the deepness of that love. Maybe a mother missing her son or missing her daughter, or the daughter missing her son or missing her father would understand that kind of missing. And when Joseph was a child, that he had a very special place in the heart of his father. And this is what it says. It says, now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his sons. We don't say that. We say we love him differently. We don't love one more than the other. Because he had born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. It's because he loved him very much. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So Joseph brings his father to Egypt, not just to take care of him, which he did, but he brought him there to spend time with him before his father died. It's important for us. As sons, we think of our father and our mother, and we want to spend time with them. And I realize that, and I hope my kids are that way. They want to spend time with me, getting back with them, getting back in the same house, even the adjustments that had to be made. It was so good to be with my kids. And it's so good. It's even better to be with my parents. It's even better to be with my kids than it was before the surgery. So Joseph brings his father, not just to bring his father, take care of him, but to spend time with him. He wanted to know what it was like to be with his father again. It's been 20-something years. Love causes action, and it moves us in the direction of others. That's why you got your mate. Let's be real. One day you said, they look pretty good. You looked at him and you said, they look a little better than average. I want to be with that person. I want to be with this person more than anybody else. And that's why you chose him. And that's why you said, I'm going to put, the guy said, I'm going to put a ring on it. And the girl said, I hope he puts a ring on it. And they got to this moment, and they said, we want to be together. It's because love is passionate, and love causes action. And you don't see the bad, you see the good. It moves us in the direction of others. It is the reason for verses like John 3:16. We see it so clearly, the why of love. And look here, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. And we read that verse, and we know it so well, so young, that we read it without the power and the enthusiasm that it really has. For God so loved the world. He loved him We see that love has action for us. It has an action for us in the fact that it says, for God so loved the world that he gave. It wasn't enough just for him to say, oh, I love the world. He gave a piece of himself. He couldn't give anything more valuable. He couldn't give anything more great than what he gave. So he said, I love you, and because I love you, I'm going to give you something. And I'm going to give you a piece of me. God's love produced an action for us. It was not enough for Joseph to know that his father was still alive. He had to have him close by. So he made arrangements for his father to be brought to him. And his love did what? It produced an action. If you really love somebody, if you really love people the way Christ has loved people, it'll produce an action in you. It'll make you want to do what he did. In other words, it'll make you want to give. We got the greatest holidays that we celebrate, Christmas and Thanksgiving coming up. Love produces an action. I mean, I can do everything. I'll give you something. I mean, I can love everybody. I can't love everybody, but I may not love everybody the same in the fact that I give, but I can give something. It was not enough for Joseph just to be clothed. He wanted to take care of his father. He wanted to love his father. So he made arrangements for his father to be brought to him, and his love produced an action. Will your love produce an action? You know what love does? It forgives wrong. And I'm glad of that because I've done a lot of it. Amen. Parents, amen. Wife, amen. Kids were here. A lot's here probably somewhere. There is love group. Probably this morning I'm banging on the bathroom door. Okay? It's probably not the best. And I'm like, out of the shower. I can't take a 30-minute shower in only 10 minutes. And I'm banging on the door. But I realize that love forgives wrong. Dad is not always right. Husband is not always right. Son is not always right. Brother is not always right. I've been all these things. And I realize that good grief, if I need it more than anything, I need to love and forgive the wrong. As 1 Corinthians 13:5 says, it keeps no record of wrong. Thank goodness. All right, quite the record. And some of you shake your head. You understand that you're so grateful that it doesn't keep the record of wrong. That real love doesn't remember the wrong that I did 2 weeks ago. It doesn't think about those things and hold me accountable for things that I cannot correct. That's the reality of it. I can do things to make it better, but I can't overcome the things that I've done. You either got to forgive me and walk with me, or you just got to go away. That's the reality of it. Thank goodness that it forgives the wrongs. Joseph said this to his brothers in verse 50, verse 20, or in chapter 50, verse 20. It says, you intended to harm me, but God intended for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. He could overlook what was bad in his brothers, even though they had done him wrong, for what God was doing good through his life. You understand that? That's huge. That's huge. He never let his love for God or others be affected by the things happening against him. Even when it was his brothers who caused the pain, he did not hold it. If we don't see one verse where he says, oh, my brother shouldn't have sold me into slavery. Oh, my brother shouldn't have me as a slave here in Potiphar's house. It's my brother's fault. He doesn't say that. He wept. It says he never left him. He went on and he wept privately for the ones who had caused this pain. Look here. So they went. So they sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. You intended, and he goes on. There you go. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of God your father. They expected his brothers, Joseph's brothers, expected him to lash out at them. They expected him to hold him down. They expected him to not care for them now that their father had died. And this is what he says. When their message came to Joseph, that Joseph wept. You know why he wept? It's because he loved his brothers. It didn't matter what they had done. It was water under the bridge. He had chosen to move past it. He had chosen to live past it. And there's people who's hurt you, that you keep holding on to, that you keep holding love from, that you keep thinking about, that you keep saying, I won't love them, I won't care for them, and it's keeping you from getting closer to them, and it's keeping His brothers were what had caused his problems. It was out of their jealousy they sold him to slavery. It was there that he was taken to Potiphar's house as a servant. And then he was in prison. And it all began with brothers. Let me show you what the timeline kind of looks like. Joseph was 17 when he was sold into slavery by brothers. So he was 17. You remember, some of you have been 17, you remember what 17 was like. Joseph then served in Potiphar's house for 13 years. So basically until he was 30, he was in Potiphar's house as a servant. Joseph was 39 when his brothers first came to Egypt. So his brothers first came to Egypt, he was 39. So Joseph was probably 41 or so when the brothers came the second time, and Jacob, which is the father, Joseph's father, comes to Egypt with him. So what happens here is there's a large span of time. Longer than there was before, there's time after. Longer than there was the 17 years, there's 20-something years that follow. He could have been angry, he could have been bitter. It wasn't part of his life, it was his life. From the time he was 17 until he was 41, it's easy to write people off, to treat people the way they treat you. I thought about this, and I probably said it out loud. I'm just writing these people off. I'm just writing them off. I'm not dealing with them. I'm not going back to their home. I'm not going back to their house. I'm not going to be in their presence. I'm not going to be in their company. They've done me wrong, so I'll just write them off. But you know what that does? That gives them all the power, because what they do affects what you do. And we're supposed to be like God, who says, I will love you anyway, no matter what you do, no matter what you say. No matter what you come against me, I'm going to love you because it's not based on you, it's based on who I am. It wasn't part of Joseph's life, it was his whole life. And the devil would love for us to treat people like that. He would love for us to only do good to the people who do good to us, and to do bad to the people who do bad to us. But aren't you glad that Christ doesn't treat you that way? We know through his word that he doesn't treat us that way. Look at Romans 5:8, that God demonstrates his own love for us in this. While we were what? Still sinners, he died for us. While you were still messing up. While you're still ugly. I mean, sinner is the worst term that can be called for you. Sinner is I'm still doing whatever I want. I'm still going against God. I'm still telling God that he doesn't matter. It says while we were still sinners that Christ died for us. It doesn't say that when we had it all figured out. And people wait to come to church, and they wait to be around people, and they don't give people the same chances that people give them. And this is the truth, that while you were nasty, while you were ugly, while you were doing the things that are not pleasing to God, while we were still sinners, that's when Christ died for us. It wasn't when we had it all figured out. Notice, his love is not only shown through words, but lived out through actions. It's able to love people that don't love back. You say, well, what does that look like? Well, it looks like this right here. Christ died for us. While we were lashing out against him, while we were still at our worst, that's when Christ died for us. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 5 says, it keeps no record of wrongs. That's what love does. I mean, you could have marriage if you kept record of wrongs. If she kept your record, you kept her record. You just wouldn't have any marriage. It would be easy for God or Jesus to remember everything we did, but he doesn't. What's it say? It says that he casts things as far as the east is from the west. He doesn't remember. He chooses. He could remember them. He could remember every bad that you ever done. But he doesn't. He chooses not to remember. When we ask for forgiveness, it would be easy for God or Jesus to remember everything we did against him, but he doesn't. Romans 5:8, it says, while we were still sinners that Christ died for us, it would be easy for him to think about the sins. He chose you and he loved you before you had to. But that's the reality of it, is that Joseph loved his brothers even while they didn't love him. They thought after his father died that he would lash out against him. Here's the ruler of Egypt. It actually says in Egypt, it says that the Pharaoh looked at Joseph and he said, the only way that I'll be higher than you is in name only. I'll only look at you and I'll only be higher than you in name only. So Joseph had enough power to get his brother put in jail forever. His brother knew that. That them when they first came to Egypt looking for food and help, but they didn't notice him. Why? Because they weren't looking for him. He was looking for them. You don't notice what you're not looking for. Joseph looked for his brothers. He looked for his dad. I'm sure at some point he thought, they'll come through. And he knew them immediately. It had been 23 years. I mean, people don't look the same in 23 years, or 22 years, or 21 years even. You look at that, and Joseph looked for them, and he cared for them in such a way that they didn't notice him, but he noticed them is because he loved them. He was looking for them. Love responds differently than expected. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Real love has a look to it. And that is why, for those of us who have experienced it to this point, we can point out impostures. That's why we can look at people and we can say, man, they don't love you. They say they love you, but their actions speak a different thing. We can, when you've had real love, you can spot the impostures. It's pretty easy. They say, oh, I love him. No, you don't. You love the idea. Oh, but they love me. They don't act like they love you. They act like they love themselves. And we watch people all the time, and we look at people all the time, and we see their life, and we see what they're going through, and we think, man, it'd be so much better if they did not care what this other person thought. And it's not that the other person really knows what love is. They probably don't. They probably have never read 1 Corinthians 13. Real love has a look to it. It's easy to spot the impostures. We look at people's behavior and know if they really loved you. They would not treat you in such a way. Real love doesn't think about itself. That's why 1 Corinthians 13:5 says this: love is not self-seeking. You can't live in a house where everything's about you. I'll say it again. You can't live in a house where everything's about you. It ain't even about me after brain surgery. It ain't always about me. And sometimes it's about Hosanna. Sometimes it's about, April needs the extra love because she's giving the extra attention for the extra amount of time. And there were days that I said at the hospital that I said, you need to go home and be with the kids. Send somebody else up here. You have to think about other people. Real love thinks about other people's needs. It's not self-seeking. Jacob, which is Joseph's father, he dies. And Joseph's brothers thought he would repay their evil deeds. Joseph wept at the thought. And his brothers still didn't understand his love for them. And it had been years. They still loved him. Why? Because he loved them in spite of themselves. He didn't love them based on what they did. He loved them based on who they are. Aren't you glad that you serve a Savior who loves you based on who you are? His love is not dependent on what you do. It's not what you think you've been told. He loved them in spite of themselves. He could see how God had used his position for God's purpose. It had anything to do with it. God took that and he turned it for good. See what I'm saying? He's planting that in your life. You don't realize it. He's probably taking what was meant for evil and he's doing just like 50 verse 20 says, what you meant for evil. In other words, brothers, what you have done bad to me, you can fill in brothers with any name possible. What you meant bad for me, God means for my good. Why? Because love is not self-seeking. Why? Because love is passionate. Why? Because love doesn't operate the way that we think it should all the time. Joseph is modeling the love of Jesus years before Jesus came to earth. Why? Because he's modeling the Father. And the Father is who Jesus said, I only do what the Father does. He's modeling God. We see it in the New Testament. It's played out here in John chapter 5. This is years later. But he said, Jesus gave them this very answer. He said, very truly I say to you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing. So we see the examples of Jesus in Joseph, but it's because he followed the Father. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. Let me go a little further. Maybe you'll catch it. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he does. Yes, and he will show him even greater works than these so that you will be amazed. When I read Genesis chapter spent his time with God. He was a prisoner for 2 to 3 years. He had spent a lot of time with God alone. Maybe you and I, we need to spend time with God alone to understand what love really is. You'll be like whoever you spend the most time with. And I'm wrapping it up, I promise. Maybe you need to spend time with God alone. Maybe in order to love like him, you got to be with him. It's because God's character rubs off on you. And Joseph had been separated from normal life so he could experience the greatness of God. It wasn't a big deal. God knew. Job, think about Job. Job was separated from the goodness of God so that he could understand who God was. And God gave him back his goodness. But he was separated from the hand-me-downs of God so he could understand the hand of God. It was different. It was difficult. His character rubs off on us. I didn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to their flesh, but it produced so much more in their life. What we've been through over the last, I'll be honest, guys, it didn't feel good to the flesh. I didn't have a lot of pain, but I had a lot of, it's just weird to have your brain operated on. I mean, Shay said, it's just, you come out of it different than you did before you went into it. It didn't feel good, but it produced something. I've read what Joseph says in chapter 50 multiple times. I've thought about this a lot. Let me go back because I don't have this verse. It says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Joseph understood his ability to endure had produced a supernatural movement of God. His ability to endure had produced a supernatural movement of God. His ability to love those who had done him wrong came as a natural byproduct, not because of anything that he had done, but because of what God had done through him. It's not in what others had done to you, but what God is doing through you. It isn't the same. Life is too short to stay mad. He could have been mad. He would have missed more than 22 or 23 years with his brothers. He would have missed time with his dad. Had he been mad at his brothers and just said, hey, here's some food, take it back to your father. I'm not going to tell you who I am. But Joseph chose not to be mad. It's too short to be mad. I can control what I do, and I can. And I'm going to work to love the unlovable and somehow obtain being like Christ. I'm going to love people that nobody loves. Some of you are teachers, you get a chance to love people that nobody loves. You get to love the children. You get to be with them. Jesus said, he said this, he said, even the tax collectors are good to those who are good to them. That's as bad as it gets. We don't like the tax collectors, Jesus. I guess he liked them. He said, even the tax collectors. He said, they love those who love them back. Look here at verse, I'll go all the way through my slide again. You love those who love you. What reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? I've probably got 2 or 3 more lines. I'm going to give you this one. How I treat people doesn't depend on how they treat me. It depends on who I am. Joseph had reason to be angry with his brothers. But instead of being angry, he chose to love them. In their time of need, he was angry, but he chose to love. And so what I ask you this morning is very simple, is will you choose to love people that don't love you back? The people that are difficult. It's really easy to love. It's really easy for me to love. Everyone loves me back. It's really easy for me to love Elijah and husband. They love him back. Rosanna ran over and sat with me this morning. Will you choose to love the people that don't love you back? Will you forgive the difficult and choose to love the ones Time together.